supreme, profound, and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. We will continue our discussion of the Udāna Sūtra. The second chapter of the Udāna Sūtra is titled The Chapter on Desire. As for this chapter on desire, then there was a verse just now that wasn't very easy to understand. However, there simply wasn't enough time to thoroughly look up the detailed commentary either.
Ndambarki xiang zapar moshi tam simlar me patang jambatang dopar namla susur machak kang tene kondom poa yin jir song Ndambarki xiang zapar moshi yana sam kisri tati jeri nang zingap sa zana zapar moshi tsi te zam jeri yonan rizritan Dishzavi nanda zapar mashit zakta te kirna bixchig zirtuta. Karsan yatanar kenchim ta martu zikito tari nuri dakati karsan dixchig zetata ti martu zendikyoto ta martu zendinins te indi puku sen la chizako te kwanku sen la chizu jana rizare. Dambarki xiang zapar moshi dan simlar kyomit batang jambatang dopar namla susur machar kang tena kondom po va yin song.
Desire arises but does not truly cease. Here, it is specifically written as but does not cease. Perhaps it profoundly means that desire arises but is not openly revealed. There are two possible explanations in the commentary. The mind is free from faults and maintains right mindfulness. One who is not greedy for various desires is said to be in accordance with the noble words. Usually the pronunciation of ban in that context, here in Prajna Paramita, we usually pronounce it ban, but here it is pronounced bo. So what is the main point about desire arises here? The main point is that if we cut off craving and desire, then in our realm of desire, we can be free from it. As we all know, in the Hinayana fruit stages, the main ones are the four fruits. Among the four stages and four fruits, the four fruits are the main focus. Stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and arhat. Among these four fruit stages, here it does not mention the stream enterer and once returner. Because the stream enterer attains it at the stage of seeing the path, the once returner will return to the desire realm one more time. As for the non-returner, they will indeed not be reborn in the desire realm once more, because all the afflictions of the desire realm have been completely cut off. If it is the last fruit among the non-returners, that is to say, if one attains the upper stream fruit, it means that among the non-returners, all the others have already been omitted, and the highest has already been attained. Of course, this particular non-returner fruit is quite unique. Sometimes it's called non-returner fruit, sometimes non-karma fruit. As for this non-returner fruit, specifically in the Abhidharmakosha, there are 5 distinct types of non-returner fruits. One is intermediate parinirvana, what we call intermediate parinirvana, and also birth parinirvana, as well as with effort parinirvana, an effortless parinirvana, and then upper stream parinirvana. Altogether, there are 5 distinct types. These 5 are indeed 5 different kinds of nirvana. These particular types differ significantly according to one's specific intention. For example, in the specific case of intermediate parinirvana, after completely leaving the desire realm during intermediate state between form and formless realms, if one cuts off afflictions, it is considered intermediate parinirvana. Then, in the case of upper parinirvana, after leaving the desire realm, if one cuts off afflictions at that time, one attains it directly. With residue parinirvana and without residue parinirvana, one refers to someone who is very diligent. And this diligent person, through their diligence, in a short period of time after leaving the desire realm, one fully attains this fruition. As for effortless parinirvana, it refers to those who are less diligent and takes a much longer time, but it naturally and truly cuts off afflictions. What we're talking about is upper stream parinirvana. Below that there is upper stream parinirvana. This upper stream parinirvana is the highest one. It should be a direct transition from the form realm, moving seamlessly and directly to the absolute highest realm of existence. This should be considered the highest state among all of them. It seems there are actually two distinct types within this category. One is what we call blissful wisdom parinirvana. As for the concept of blissful wisdom, it should be when one is in the Akanistha heaven, the highest realm of the form realm, that all afflictions are completely cut off. The other is called blissful concentration. When reaching the highest, the peak of existence, afflictions are cut off. You all must be mainly here there is something called Dambarkyeju, or desire-born. As for desire-born, it means relying on one's intention. One is reborn in the form realm or the formless realm, depending on where one wishes. According to his heartfelt wishes and profound desires, he can continuously go there to ultimately attain nirvana. Of course, the specific nirvana mentioned here is not the nirvana as described in Mahayana Buddhism. It should be the nirvana of the anagamin among the four fruits of the Shravakayana. So here, if we just now, this refers to desire-born non-leakage. As for non-leakage, it refers to the three aspects of discipline, concentration, and wisdom. In terms of discipline, no leakage, meaning that his six faculties do not leak out to the six external objects of the world at all. This mainly pertains to the discipline, shula, training. A mind that is truly without faults primarily means that the mind is not at all tainted by any form of discrimination or prejudice. As for discrimination, there is discrimination of desire, discrimination of aversion, and many others. This refers to meditative concentration, dhyana. It is perfection of concentration training among discipline, concentration, and wisdom. Right mindfulness, he consistently relies on profound wisdom to protect his own intricate mental continuum. This profound understanding is precisely what is called wisdom, prajna. In other words, the anagamin, non-returner, who is born from desire, has reached a significant stage. The person who is a stream enterer or non-returner perfects these three: discipline, concentration, and wisdom. As for the mindfulness mentioned earlier, it mainly refers to the four foundations of mindfulness. The mindfulness of the body, of feelings of the mind, and of phenomena. These are the four foundations of mindfulness. One diligently practices these four foundations of mindfulness. Then, based upon the three essential trainings of discipline, concentration, and wisdom, in addition, one does not become attached to various forms of sensual desire, such as sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and so on. Those who are not attached to these things, who are free from desire, such people, the noble ones, the Buddha Shakyamuni, as stated in the relevant Abhidharma Sutras, such people are considered of the highest level, as mentioned earlier regarding those of the highest level within the entire form realm. All their afflictions have already been eliminated. After eliminating them, they attain the highest state among the stainless non-returner fruits. So here, it has already been stated as the highest level. If one attains this highest level, then the others, including those mentioned earlier, such as the middle level or the born level, as well as those with practice and those without practice, after eliminating their respective afflictions to varying degrees, will naturally and effortlessly attain these states as well. So here, the main and crucial point is that, according to the Shravakayana perspective, within our desire realm, the highest state can be said to be among the non-returner fruits, which is a truly significant spiritual attainment. Among the non-returner fruits, the highest state is like this. Therefore, this level of attainment also requires the elimination of all desires. Of course, if you go a step further and eliminate the desires or attachments of the three realms, then you attain the fruit of no more learning, which is indeed the state of arhatship. This profoundly indicates that if one completely and utterly eradicates all worldly desires, then one will naturally and truly attain the ultimate fruit of arhatship. That is the intended meaning we want to convey here. Next, how exactly do we eliminate these faults? This important question is explained clearly through various analogies. The defilements such as craving that exist in our mental continuum can also be eliminated through several methods. Just as a craftsman refines silver, the wise proceed step by step, moment by moment, gradually removing their own defilements. Here, the main point is that there are indeed several analogies presented below. The very first analogy, some say it's a blacksmith, but in this context it should actually be a silversmith. The silversmith, therefore, serves as quite a fitting analogy. He begins the process by refining the white silver. Because the silver naturally has a lot of rust and impurities on it, he systematically removes these impurities by means of burning with fire, hammering, rubbing, and polishing, and so on, using these effective methods to directly eliminate the unwanted impurities. Similarly, for a person of wisdom, eliminating afflictions within their mental continuum isn't something that happens all at once. Among people, there is gradual and sudden enlightenment. If it is sudden enlightenment, then of course all these obstacles are eliminated at once. But if it is gradual enlightenment, then it happens step by step, not all at once. It's not that everything is eliminated at the same time. As for the timing of elimination, it happens moment by moment, repeatedly and continuously, naturally and progressing over time. Here, moment after moment, it is unceasing. If it is gradual, then it proceeds step by step, little by little. It's not that everything is cut off all at once. So, just like a silversmith, the various things he makes out of silver, he relies on a sequential process, slowly and gradually crafting them. In the same way, when we gradually practice to eliminate all of these various mental afflictions, it is not instantaneous. It happens moment by moment, gradually and progressively. Then we eliminate the impurities above, such as these stains of greed and so on. There is a story about a certain bhikshu who heard from others, or perhaps even from the Buddha himself, about the various doors of afflictions, that afflictions are indeed numerous and manifold, and how they manifest in many forms. When he heard about these afflictions, just like when we study the Abhidharmakosha or the Abhidharma, we often talk about all kinds of defiled minds and various afflictions. At that moment, he felt in his heart, there are so many afflictions. If I have to cut them off one by myself, who knows how many years or months it will take. It's so difficult. He started to feel a bit puzzled and somewhat worried, not quite sure what to do. He thought, there are just too many afflictions. Later, the Buddha became aware of this situation. He knew that the conditions for transforming this being had matured. So the Buddha himself took this bhikshu, this monk. When they went into the city, there was a silversmith. They saw the silversmith working step by step, carrying out his craft, doing his work with care. After the Buddha and the other bhikshus saw this process, the Buddha then asked the bhikshu, "What do you think about this, now that you have personally witnessed and understood how silver is refined?" He replied, "Yes, I have seen it." Then the Buddha asked, "How does he purify the impurities from the silver?" He answered, "It's done gradually, step by step." Then the Buddha, the enlightened one, recited this profound verse. So when it comes to our spiritual practice, actually, for some individuals, right after taking refuge in the Buddha, in a remarkably very short period of time, they either gain some realization or experience some signs of accomplishment. In fact, for some individuals, it truly seems to be easy as well. If someone genuinely desires to attain it, they can achieve it within a short period of time. Take Khenpo Achang, for example. Whether he was studying the Abhidharmakosha or studying Madhyamaka, it was especially easy for him. There was one time with the Abhidharmakosha, he relied on a Khenpo, This Khenpo seemed to have basically and thoroughly memorized both the Abhidharmakosha and its commentary as well. He would often recite them from memory. There was also something like Madhyamaka, and again he would recite its outline from memory. At that time, in Dzogchen Monastery, there must have been some truly remarkable Khenpos. I have never heard of things. Among the Khenpos and Khenmos who teach 5 great treatises, none of them teach from memory without looking at texts. I don't know, maybe there are some who do. When teaching the 5 great treatises, they rely on memory to teach, without even looking at the books. At that time, Khenpo Achang couldn't understand, and when he couldn't understand, he would pray as he listened. Later, it seems that it was said that in the past, when Khenpo Patrul Rinpoche was teaching the Abhidharmakosha, there was a practitioner named Panshi. When he began to pray during that time, it seemed that he fell asleep, and after he fell asleep, he saw Vasubandhu, the great scholar, who bestowed some blessings upon him. As a result, he quickly received blessings. After that, he learned the Abhidharmakosha more quickly. So I hope, I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but at the time I wanted to say this. All of us who are currently present here, gathered together, should look at Khenpo Achang after he attained enlightenment, whether it was the 5 great treatises or the 5 treatises of Maitreya, or the Mahamaya Jala, including the teachings of Dzogchen. He basically received all of them from a single master. Perhaps it was about receiving the transmission. If we talk about, certainly on our side sometimes, it seems that just the Pramanavartika takes several years. The first part of the Abhidharmakosha and the second part of the Abhidharmakosha, back when His Holiness was, he would teach several treatises in a single year, especially in 1984. I hadn't arrived yet. When I looked, I saw that in the previous year, an extraordinary number of treatises had been taught. All 5 great treatises were covered within a single year. But here, our current teaching style is a bit different. This is called the specialist's approach to learning, focusing and specializing continuously, going deeper and deeper into a single subject. For example, with the Abhidharmakosha, we study and study and study it repeatedly. This year we will cover the first half, and next year we will study the second half. It's precisely like this. So when I saw their way of listening and contemplating back then, it also seemed especially easy. These great masters, perhaps for us it's not so simple, just like what Shenshu had indeed already said. Constantly polish and sweep. Do not let any dust alight upon it. If we are always diligent and persistent in our spiritual practice, the mind is truly like a bright, clear mirror stand. At that particular time, Shenshu had attained a small degree of enlightenment. Later, the 6th Patriarch said, "Your realization is still attached." The state that the 6th Patriarch attained later was a bit different. So I think for us, it's like when we truly see a silversmith, it also becomes a kind of, but if we happen to see a silversmith, we might genuinely think, wow, this silver piece is really quite nice. What should I make with it? Or something like that. We might not even think at all. And when we see a carpenter, we might wonder, does this carpenter have a good temper or not? Is he good looking or not? Or maybe we have some other ways of thinking. Whenever the Buddha encountered anything at all, he would immediately and skillfully turn it into a profound teaching of the Dharma. Next, it says,
삼근기는 고아담 용습장내 삼시들 따르 노빠강당 강방와 대당 대대 대대대와 번스물단
just as a cobbler treats leather, first cleaning it before making shoes, gradually cutting off all desires, one attains all kinds of happiness. Here, the following uses the analogy of a skilled cobbler making shoes to explain this concept. The profound meaning is that, just like a dedicated cobbler making shoes, nowadays in the historically rich Luhuo County, there used to be a skilled cobbler who practiced their craft. And eventually it turned into, I met him before, and he said that now he has purchased a house in the Han region for 930,000 yuan. He originally started out as a cobbler. Later, little by little, he gradually became a successful restaurant owner, and he diligently kept on running it. He stated he was the one who had run a restaurant in Luhuo. For the longest period of time, he had the longest time there. Many Tibetans who opened restaurants only lasted 5 years at most. He said, "I've been running mine for more than 20 years. I remember that clearly. So cobblers, there were many cobblers in the past. At our college, there was also a cobbler located downstairs, a skilled craftsman. Gradually, through his diligent work, he became a successful contractor. This particular cobbler back then primarily worked with various types of leather, because making shoes inherently meant crafting durable and stylish leather shoes. For leather shoes, whether it was cowhide or pigskin, the leather had to be processed before it could be used. And during the process of making them, first you had to clean and purify the leather and then make the shoes. This is generally how it is for most of the people. It's the same principle. When we try to cut off afflictions and desires, it's also a gradual process. Just like the person meticulously making shoes just now, it's not like once he gets the raw leather, he can't do anything further with it. At our place, where we have a dedicated spot for tea, there's an elderly old lady who comes every single day to meticulously polish shoes. And sometimes, even when Khenpo doesn't really need it, just to kindly help her out with her small business. So every time she came, her prices gradually went up. Eventually, Khenpo became less willing to have her meticulously polish his shoes. I jokingly mentioned her to someone, a close acquaintance, because on one hand, people like her are quite pitiful, and they rely on this to make a living. But slowly her greed also steadily grew and grew. It used to be 15 yuan, and then eventually it became 20 yuan. Later it went up to 25 yuan. When it reached 25 yuan, Khenpo said, "That's so expensive." So now there are still shoe shiners, but it seems like there are no cobblers anymore. In the past, everything was fixed with nails and such, maybe right here. But now most shoes are generally just bought from factories. So those who are able to cut off their desires, only after gradually letting go of them completely, can they truly find peace and happiness. So this refers to a cobbler who worked for the king Prasenajit. During that historical period, the king would also have had a cobbler in his employ. In close proximity to this cobbler, there was also an artisan who specialized in the craft of making wheels. When the annotation mentions shoes, it should actually be properly referring to wheels. The original wheels were probably crafted in a manner quite similar to how leather is processed. So near King Prasenajit's skilled cobbler, there was a craftsman who specialized in making wheels, and he was diligently working with the leather material. During the process of making things with leather, after the Buddha carefully observed this unfolding situation, he spoke this important verse. The Venerable Buddha observed King Prasenajit's cobbler, the diligent artisan responsible for crafting and maintaining the king's wheel tires, and also for fashioning his own personal shoes. It was a remarkable and often discussed coincidence that King Prasenajit, the esteemed ruler, and the enlightened Buddha were both born on the very same day. In India, he was one of the 5 great kings who ruled the land. He was extremely wealthy and quite prosperous indeed. I remember Lama Lachu Rinpoche, in a commentary on the aspiration of Sukhavati, when discussing impermanence, it says that King Prasenajit died in a very pitiable way. He was originally also a disciple of Shakyamuni Buddha and also a great benefactor of Shakyamuni Buddha. In the first half of his life, he was incredibly wealthy and highly honored, and everyone around him deeply envied his opulent status. But in the end, it appears that either his own son or a minister ultimately usurped his throne and seized control. And then he had no way to stay there. It seems he went to seek out King Ajatashatru or someone like that. I forget exactly. And then he left. After leaving his country, in the end, he was tormented by unbearable hunger with nothing to eat along the way. King Prasenajit eventually became like a beggar. With great difficulty, he once managed to get a raw, crisp radish and some cold water. He ate the crunchy radish and then drank the very cold water, and after thoroughly drinking the refreshingly cold water, he fainted. While he was unconscious, there were many carriages passing by on the dusty roadside, kicking up an amount of fine dust, and this pervasive dust kept getting into his mouth, making it difficult to breathe, and in the end, that's precisely how he tragically died. In the past, historical figures like Napoleon from Western countries also died in a rather miserable way, didn't he? So King Prasenajit from our Buddhist history, Indeed, well, he is also called King Prasenajit. And in our modern translation, he is widely called King Shengguang. He also tragically met his demise in a rather tragic and unfortunate way in the end, which was quite sorrowful. So this story is not necessarily particularly essential to mention here, but still, on the one hand, it truly serves as a profound metaphor for the inherent impermanence of all things. And on the other hand, it shows that when he was king, he was quite prestigious. But when impermanence arrives, perhaps even that cannot be relied upon. I am quite concerned about President Yoon of South Korea and Kim Ki-on-hee. They used to be very much in the limelight. But suddenly, they are about to be detained and thoroughly investigated. In fact, life really is like this, while the highs and lows can be extremely dramatic and profoundly impactful. A person might be very successful and widely recognized, with everyone respecting you, deeply admiring you, and praises you, and all ordinary people will wholeheartedly follow you. But once that person experiences even a slight bit of a downfall, then absolutely everyone begins to look at them in a completely different light, with an entirely altered attitude. So, no matter what the circumstances, a great deal of worldly glory and material wealth really doesn't have much inherent meaning. Therefore, as dedicated practitioners, we must develop a firm and profound understanding of impermanence first and foremost. And then, regarding the chapter on desire, we also need to have a very clear understanding of this, because nowadays many people around the world truly treat so-called love as something real and substantial, whether it's for love or for this. Yesterday, during our counseling session, both sides were, in the end, I couldn't hear anything clearly. All I could hear was, I. So I listened carefully for a moment, trying to figure out what exactly all the was about. Sometimes it sounded like other times Maybe those words just get used a lot in those situations. So whether it's or honestly, sometimes quite actually, we understand the reasoning pretty well. But ordinary people are truly and quite pitiable indeed. Permanence, happiness, self, and purity, these are the four great misconceptions. And truly, everyone is like this. It's not just one or two people. With so many people, there's really no sense of impermanence at all. When it comes to attachment, not only do people fail to see its true nature, but countless beings are actually confused and suffer greatly because of it. That's precisely why it's truly important to understand these fundamental principles. It's really crucial. As for the literal meaning of the word itself, as I mentioned earlier regarding this attachment, whether it's what we call love or craving, it should be gradually eliminated. There is the tangible desire, one with a physical form, and then there is the afflictive desire. Tangible desire refers to forms, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and even parents. And for monastics, it can be offerings from others. So in these aspects, there are desires for material things. These also need to be eliminated. Then there is the afflictive attachment, which is essentially the strong desire of the mind, a powerful longing or craving that can cause suffering. As for this, it refers to the attachment and clinging that occurs within our mind and various mental factors. We each inherently have our own individual mind, whether it's attachment to a person or to wealth, as long as it arises in an innate way. If there is such a strong desire, that too must be completely eliminated. Whether it's eliminating these two distinct types of tangible desires, or the desires that are deeply afflictive. Of course, tangible desires also contain elements of affliction. But this is discussed from the perspective of the object, and if the seeds in one's own continuum have not been cut off, external objects, such as the love of parents, the love between husband and wife, and all kinds of worldly love, are closely related to their respective objects. There are some cases where there is no external object, but within one's own mind, the seeds of afflictions naturally arise, and when they mature, they manifest. This also happens. So, no matter what, whether it is cutting off attachment or eliminating desire, this is ultimately the happiest and most liberating thing. For such people, many of us may feel that we cannot cut off attachment, nor can we eliminate desire. If we were to eliminate desire, it would seem as if we became like stone. Just as was mentioned earlier, some Western scholars believe this is a kind of craving, and that this craving is indeed very necessary and important. But if you actually look at it, this craving can never truly be satisfied. In the end, this desire becomes insatiable. This principle will be explained below.
Gartib deva kan dodnan dopa tamchi de yonsor pong dopa tamchi yonpong vem chodab deva tobar nyer.
If one seeks true happiness and peace, one should cut off all craving and desire. When all desires are completely severed, one attains the supreme bliss. If we truly wish to seek all forms of happiness, both worldly and transcendent, all kinds of profound happiness, this true and genuine happiness, some partial happiness may indeed be obtained through desire, but if you want a very complete, very comprehensive happiness, the greatest happiness in the world, and the greatest happiness beyond the world as well, if you truly wish to attain this goal, then you should. What should you do? You should completely eliminate all of your worldly desires. Not just a little bit, but completely, just like Shakyamuni Buddha or like Shariputra and Maudgalyayana. All of their desires, as explained in the Abhidharma Kosha and the Abhisamaya Lankara, are discussed in detail in these texts. This includes both the afflictive obscurations and the cognitive obscurations, even the subtlest aspects, which are analyzed extremely thoroughly. If you truly wish to attain the ultimate happiness, if you want to obtain it, then these desires, this craving, must be eliminated. If you completely eliminate all such desires, that is to say, at first when we reach the path of seeing, we eliminate a portion of them. Then on the path of cultivation, we eliminate another portion. In the case of the Mahayana, from the 2nd to the 10th bhumi on the path of cultivation, they are gradually eliminated step by step. Finally, at the stage of no more learning, which is at the end of the 10th bhumi, habitual tendencies of cognitive obscurations eliminated. At this point, one attains perfection of abandonment and realization. This is the greatest happiness of the Buddha. If we explain it according to the Mahayana, of course it is like this, but here perhaps it is not talking about such a high level. If you start eliminating from the stage of stream enterer and finally attain the fruit of arhatship, the nirvana without remainder, then in this entire world there should be absolutely no suffering with outflows at all at any point in time. And it is the greatest happiness. So regarding this story, a Brahmin came before the Buddha and asked, what does it truly and deeply mean to completely abandon all craving? And what is it genuinely and truly like if one truly desires to attain lasting happiness? He specifically asked the Buddha, he directly asked Gautama. Sometimes these Shravakas, when referring to the Buddha's caste, they would call him Gautama. So if one wishes to abandon all craving and attain all happiness, what is it really like? Then the Buddha began to recite this verse. The essential point of this verse is that all forms of desire and craving must be eliminated. After these desires and cravings are thoroughly eliminated, we will certainly attain true happiness. It is through aversion that one becomes free from desire, and through freedom from desire that one attains liberation. This is also stated in the alternative translation of the miscellaneous Udāna Sūtra. It is through aversion. Aversion refers to developing a sense of revulsion towards samsara. Because of this aversion, becomes free from desire. And because of being free from desire, one attains liberation. In our human world, that is to say, the less craving we have, the more happiness we experience. As we often say, contentment brings constant happiness. This is something that people in the world also talk about. A long time ago, I once bought a book called Contentment Brings Constant Happiness. Later, I eventually learned that this particular book was actually a significant bestseller throughout the entire world. Many people really like to talk about this. But in reality, if one can truly practice it, it probably means that one's desires have diminished. Just as is taught in both the Mahayana and Hinayana traditions, to completely eradicate all desires at the root. This is something very rare and difficult. So, if we in this world truly wish to attain the greatest possible happiness or reach the most profoundly blissful state, then it becomes essential that we first find an effective way to completely let go of all our worldly desires and attachments. If one can completely and entirely abandon all desires and greed, then that person will become increasingly happy, even among people in the world. If someone is excessively greedy, then by relying on that profound greed, they will inevitably develop all kinds of intense anger, not just simple anger, but also, in order to obtain the desired objects of their strong desire, their deep-seated jealousy will also become very strong and pervasive. Moreover, whether they are very much trying to obtain something or have already obtained it, they will also have a sense of arrogance and stinginess. In fact, greed is the very root of all afflictions. If a person is very greedy, their spiritual practice may not necessarily be very good either. If someone has little greed, At the very least, even if we don't know how their practice is, at the very least, this person is very happy in our daily lives as well, regardless of whether someone is male or female. If their desires are greatly reduced, they won't have so many different pursuits to engage in. Their mind will be very calm. Life will be very simple. But for those individuals who are exceedingly greedy, they relentlessly want to fight for everything. There was once a very old man in our hometown, and when he eventually passed away, he had accumulated a huge pile of various plastic bags. And those very old kattas, the kattas from that particular time period, were of extremely poor quality. But to him, they were completely useless. Maybe it's because elderly people tend to be more greedy. So, if we look at it this way, if someone isn't very greedy, whether it's towards people or material possessions, wealth, if their greed isn't strong, some monks or practitioners, their homes are also very simple and pure. There isn't much excess stuff. But if someone is very greedy, they can't bear to part with anything. Their house is piled up with things everywhere, and every corner is packed full. And some people don't even clean up after themselves regularly. If that's the case, the place where they live in often ends up looking like a neglected and filthy doghouse. But in fact, true and dedicated practitioners always keep things exceptionally clean and pure. This way, their minds are not filled with excessive and distracting desires. Their hearts can focus on the Dharma, and it's much easier to do so. Those who follow their desires will never be satisfied, but those who use wisdom to cut off desire will find contentment. This means those who chase after desires, who are always after external things, such as the visual form, the auditory sound, the olfactory smell, the gustatory taste, and the tactile touch. People who are heavily and intensely driven by their desires, these individuals will never truly be satisfied. If a person genuinely cannot find lasting satisfaction, this is the most crucial point. Sometimes when we try to explain this here, it's not that easy to explain clearly, but in reality, everyone should truly understand that if someone has very strong desires, they become truly insatiable and never feel truly content. So what exactly should individuals like this do? They should, in essence, whoever uses wisdom, this whoever actually means anyone at all, regardless of who they are. For example, in India, they place a great deal of importance on caste and class distinctions. But for Buddhists, anyone can do this. Because in some other religions, however, there are still significant differences when it comes to the understanding and application of wisdom. For instance, if you are a Brahmin or belong to the Kshatriya caste, your social status and your personal identity inherently possess a certain established hierarchy. But here, completely regardless of precisely who you are, if you effectively utilize your own inherent wisdom and truly come to understand the nature of desire, in this regard you can also look at the sword of wisdom for thoroughly ascertaining reality, where Mipham Rinpoche indeed analyzes this profound concept using his great wisdom. This kind of desire, including both the one who truly craves and the object of that craving, is analyzed in terms of temporal relationships and inferred using the method of analyzing particles and so on. In this particular way, it seems that if you carefully look at desire and attachment, then their arising is definitely unreasonable. We naturally develop a very firm conviction in this particular point. However, if you are an ordinary person, it is very difficult not to be attached. Logically, you may understand this, but without actual practice, you may not be able to apply it in real life. Therefore, if you diligently apply your own pure wisdom to thoroughly analyze it and perceive its inherent and fundamental true nature, then you can effectively eliminate all forms of desire. If you completely eliminate all desire, you will certainly attain true contentment. This profound statement refers to the naked ascetics of that particular time. Among these naked ascetics, there was indeed one individual called Desire Bliss. What was his view? What did he believe? He firmly believed that as long as one diligently practiced asceticism, one could ultimately attain complete liberation. He indulged in sensual pleasures, thinking he practiced asceticism, as the naked ascetics' practices were rigorous. So now they are spread out in different places, especially in Western countries where groups of naked ascetics can be found. They are even more dedicated than us Buddhists. They even wear many small bells on their feet that produce a charming sound. They do not steal, they do not kill, and they do not consume meat. In many ways, they are quite similar to Mahayana Buddhists. These naked ascetics, it is said, believe that sensual pleasures cannot be completely eliminated. However, through ascetic practices, they believe it is still possible to overcome them. This is what they believe. There is also a particular Brahmin who is specifically called ancestor worship. His view is that one should fully indulge in various pleasures as one truly wishes. As long as some delightful sensual pleasures appear directly before you, then, if you completely indulge in these pleasures as you genuinely wish, it's just like drinking water when you're thirsty. You immediately feel satisfied and gain happiness in this way. This is how they believe they attain liberation and happiness. But in reality, these are all not the ultimate teachings. The Buddha analyzed the Brahmin's viewpoint, as well as considering the viewpoint of the naked ascetics. Then he thoughtfully recited the 2 verses mentioned above and below. Therefore, in this context, he states, if we follow our desires, we will never be satisfied. So what brings satisfaction? It is through observing with deep wisdom and mindful awareness. Only then can we truly control our desires and find lasting satisfaction. Actually, when we listen and contemplate, and engage in long-term study of Mahayana Buddhism in this way, although the effects may not be immediate, gradually, over time, in our mental continuum, these afflictions, whether it's anger or hatred, many of them can indeed be completely eliminated. This includes some forms of anger and also some forms of jealousy, these 5 root afflictions. Gradually, we first come to understand them in principle. And then, by putting this understanding into practice, they too can also be effectively and completely eliminated. Desire can never truly be satisfied, but wisdom always brings true satisfaction. Those who are satisfied by wisdom are not entangled by anything at all. As I mentioned earlier, in fact, relying on desire to find a sense of ultimate and lasting satisfaction cannot achieve true satisfaction. If your desires keep increasing, you'll only become more and more greedy. It's like drinking salt water. It never quenches your thirst. But if you truly possess the wisdom to understand the concept of emptiness, or the insightful wisdom to grasp the nature of impermanence, or the crucial wisdom to recognize the inherent faults and consequences of unchecked greed, of course, among these types of wisdom, the best is the wisdom that realizes emptiness. If you have this kind of wisdom, then you can develop a sense of contentment. The commentary also says that, generally speaking, it is understood that everyone all has these desires and inclinations. And as for desire, even when people grow considerably old, even though their hair turns completely white and their physical senses gradually decline, in reality, the profound and enduring desire for satisfaction is very hard to suppress. Some elderly people still have very strong desires and intense greed. This situation is very common. There are indeed people like this. So in their case, it's simply that they lack the strength and capability, that's all. In reality, they do not have this sense of contentment. On the surface, it may seem as if when people just get really older and older, they no longer have greed or anger. However, that is not actually the true situation. It is simply that their mental faculties and inner strength are lacking in power. But once, in our own mental continuum, we possess undefiled wisdom and realize that all phenomena are devoid of inherent nature, only this kind of true wisdom brings genuine contentment. When there is wisdom, there is a deep sense of fulfillment. With the sense of fulfillment, one will not be entangled by the 3 types of existence. Regarding existence, this can refer to both self-existence and other existence. For example, if you possess wisdom yourself, you are fundamentally not entangled by these afflictions. Or, in the case of others, because you yourself have absolutely no attachment whatsoever in this regard, even if others have some attachment toward you, even if they have some impure intentions toward you, it is just like being attached to empty space. If you simply ignore it completely, then there will be no such obstacles at all. Therefore, a person without desires will also indeed truly find their spiritual practice goes quite very smoothly and quite easily. Just like the sun and the moon do not remain permanently in the sky, and just as a lotus flower does not cling to the water, a truly great bodhisattva is like the moon in the sky and the lotus in the water. remaining completely unstained by all kinds of worldly temptations and distractions. There will not ever be such a situation, indeed, in any way at all, because we are driven by desire. We feel insecure and afraid, constantly worrying about gains and losses, wondering, because he always has some kind of a dream, always harbors some kind of inherent desire. And with this desire, he will never truly be satisfied. He is always seeking to obtain even more. There is a Tibetan businessman I know who invested in building a significant hotel in one particular place. This was many years ago, approximately 20 years back. The hotel was built quite well, and as soon as it started making a little money, he took out another loan from the bank. Then in another place, he built another hotel. And when things started to look up a little there, he did the same thing again. So sometimes when I truly see what other people do, wow, truly, human desire is never, ever satisfied. There used to be something quite profound called A Lonely Life. This book was written by a very famous foreign movie actor. It was indeed his personal memoir, his autobiography. In this significant memoir, what exactly did he say? He stated that when our deepest desires are fully fulfilled, or when we finally achieve our important goals and aspirations, it is ultimately impossible. That's true. If you look at people in the world today, there really isn't anyone whose desires have been completely satisfied. There simply aren't any. Wow, the more people pursue things nowadays, it seems that even those so-called successful people are the same way. Business people, for example, often think, if I expand a little bit more, perhaps I can even further. And then, just like I mentioned earlier, they take out another loan and buy something else. Or some people with status, this is often encountered today, like section chiefs, deputy section chiefs. The deputy section chief really wants to become the section chief. And once someone becomes section chief, they want to be deputy bureau chief. After becoming deputy bureau chief, they want to be bureau chief. Once they become bureau chief, they aim for deputy minister, then full minister. They want county head, party secretary. If the county isn't enough, it's the prefecture. If the prefecture isn't enough, it's the province. If the province isn't enough, it's the central government. Go even higher, maybe. I think the United Nations is probably quite the most prestigious position or title in the world right now. But even then, they definitely won't be satisfied. They might even want to rule the whole world. Whether it's fame or status in this world, or perhaps even power, there's never any real, true sense of satisfaction. There's just absolutely no satisfaction. So in the very end, you end up completely exhausted. You probably know this feeling too, right? Wang Jianlin in 2013, 2015, and 2016, he was China's richest man, truly the wealthiest person at that time. But after around 2017, he started to rack up huge debts. He used to be called the richest man, Fu as in wealthy. But in the end, he became China's most indebted man, Fu as in debt. He was the one with the heaviest debts. Even now, in cities all over the country, there are Wonder Plazas absolutely everywhere. Speaking of Wonder Plaza, basically in all of China's major and significant cities, he has extensive real estate projects located there. However, he just got greedier and greedier, constantly seeking more and more. And in the end, he was ultimately left with absolutely nothing. However, some people still suggest that he might potentially have some personal assets. At the very peak of his business, it truly seemed like the total output value was astonishingly over 2 trillion RMB. But later, he had debts of over 400 billion RMB. Over 400 billion, that is an absolutely staggering amount of money. Later on, it seemed like he started selling off properties everywhere, some at incredibly low prices, just selling them off all over the place, across various locations. Wonder Plazas were being sold everywhere. Now, I heard he has paid back how many billions? Maybe over 200 billion has been repaid. But there's still more than 200 billion left to pay. So sometimes people just keep thinking, later on, it seemed like even people like Jack Ma and Zhu Jiayin, they also became the very richest at some point in time, but all along they maintained their position when they were at their wealthiest, at the height of their success. You could tell from their words and actions, they had to keep pursuing more, never stopping. So what is this? It's just like what's being talked about here. Desire. This desire can never be satisfied. Whether it's social status or accumulated wealth or all kinds of widespread fame you might have achieved, there are so many significant goals that people tirelessly pursue in this vast world. But these goals always seem to be just out of our grasp. Just like what was mentioned in that memoir earlier, I used to think, even though it's just worldly language, something from the mundane world, maybe he also lived a lonely life. Maybe he was also very sorrowful. Judging from the title of his memoir, this person might be quite pessimistic. But from this, it's clear that people in the world, no matter how much they pursue their ultimate goal, it's impossible to actually achieve that goal. Their goals are truly endless. But as long as your personal desires, after being analyzed with wisdom, are considered, you feel satisfied when you are already content, whether it's all the wealth or status in the world, no matter what it is, you already possess everything you truly need within yourself. So our desires are fulfilled through, for example, in the past, some people actually sold bicycles right there in my hometown, wow, if a family had a bicycle, everyone would be envious. Later, it was motorcycles. And after people got motorcycles, then it became cars, even if it was just a second-hand car. But people kept pursuing more and more, never stopping. But in reality, when we look back later, when we truly reflect on it, actually, all of this is just a sign of ignorance. Even if you have such wealth, what does it really mean? It's nothing more than simply a way to satisfy your own personal vanity. In front of others, it's just like, oh, I have this, I have that. Other than that, there's really absolutely nothing else to it. So sometimes for us as human beings, some kinds of suffering truly are beyond our control. For example, getting sick or being hungry, these are things we can't cure instantly. But there are also some kinds of suffering, like the suffering of unfulfilled desires. This kind of suffering, a necessary part of process. It's the suffering brought about by our own desires and delusions that causes us this kind of pain. Analyzing this through the wisdom of the Buddha is truly necessary. Here it also says, too, those who are satisfied with wisdom are not entangled by anything.
놀라 척비 먹강 연 대덕 제마 추문가 종수도 솜부르 늑바나 varchit 동어를 먼저로 놀라 척비 먹강 연 놀라 척비 먹강 연 대덕 추문가 종수 솜부르 바나 도려 varchit 동어를 맞지도
While those who are attached to desires, when some of you are giving oral Dharma examination, you bring a little bit of that. I notice that when many of you present, I observe that everyone has their own unique and individual manner of speaking. Not everyone, but some people do. Now, I have also learned this myself. Those who are attached to desires, those who are attached to desires, alas, they delight in what is not lawful. In their youth, they still survive, not seeing any significant obstacles or consequences. Next, it says, because desire in its very nature has its inherent faults and imperfections. Once there are the faults of our own desire, one develops a malicious mind. If there is a malicious mind, it becomes an obstacle to practice or to a true liberation. So in order to completely eliminate this verse is spoken. It refers to people attached to desires, those fixated on craving, people obsessed with sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and touches. These people are pitiable. It's truly sad. Just as the verse says, alas. Wow, it's really pitiful. Why is that? Because people who are greedy, their actions are certainly bound to be unlawful. People who are excessively greedy, for example, like someone who possesses an intense greed for alcohol, they often find themselves compelled to go to these kinds of truly inappropriate places to drink. And those individuals who are obsessed with the opposite sex, they completely disregard all shame, morality, and rules. If someone is extremely greedy for wealth, they might resort to stealing, robbery, and all sorts of crimes. As for worldly morals, laws, and rules, for such a person it's very, very hard to be truly cured. So every single sentence here, these words of the Buddha are truly, perhaps it is precisely because we ourselves are devout Buddhists, every single sentence can truly be said to resonate deeply within our hearts. Oh, it's truly right. Every time I have this kind of feeling, And those who are deeply greedy, they are truly pitiful. They definitely have a fondness for things that are unlawful, such as the 10 unwholesome deeds and other illegal acts. Even if for a short period of time they live in this world, say for a short duration, after all, the longest a person can live in this world is 100 years. Even if someone lives in this world for several decades, they may not seem to encounter any obstacles. If they don't appear to face any obstacles, maybe they won't witness death, won't encounter any hindrances. Just like I mentioned earlier, those who are deeply greedy, they are constantly doing unreasonable things every single day, including among some young people nowadays. Some are also quite young people. But they simply don't drink alcohol, don't smoke, and don't play mahjong at all. Even in their daily conduct as a person, they tend to follow the rules more strictly. There are people like that too. Wow. But some people who are very greedy, or people like that, are just like what Confucius said the other day. Apart from their own illnesses, their parents worry about them every day. In my hometown, there was someone who was always getting involved in all sorts of things every day, sometimes stealing things, sometimes getting into fights with lots of people, just all sorts of things. Even personal belongings within the family home, including some valuable coral necklaces that his parents had carefully accumulated over time, were illicitly stolen and then sold by him. Subsequently, I was informed that he was incarcerated in jail. I was really happy about it. Oh, he should be locked up like that. Then I asked how long. He should be locked up for longer. They said he only stole an iPhone, so he was sentenced to 6 months, they said. I said 6 months, way too short. He should be locked up for 6 years instead. Otherwise, his parents will always be worried. It brings them a great deal of pain and suffering. So, for individuals who are driven by such intense greed, their transgressions and crimes are indeed exceptionally serious. Back in Gwangyang City, there was a Buddhist practitioner named Yongmeng, brave. Although he was a Buddhist, he engaged in numerous actions to severely punish, overtly threaten, and subtly intimidate the workers under his direct supervision. He carried out many such unethical practices. Furthermore, during the daylight, he would also, in addition to his other activities, and subsequently started engaging in various illegal and unlawful acts. Moreover, he would go from one garden to another, doing all sorts of really, really illegal things. So the Buddha recited this verse, and there are also such cases. In some captivating stories, it is often said that there once lived a very poor and struggling man. Through his own diligent and unwavering efforts, he eventually became an incredibly wealthy and prosperous individual. After he also gained wealth among his relatives and friends, he emphatically declared, stating that in the near future he would marry a truly beautiful and also a very wealthy wife, and so on, outlining his ambitious plans. In front of others, he committed all kinds of evil without restraint, but later, after he became wealthy, he gained the recognition of others. Then he obtained someone who was exceptionally good, with truly excellent looks and all other aspects of his life as well. He subsequently married a wife. Afterwards, he remained deeply immersed in such greed and desire. Even when it came to his daily meals and sustenance, he only ate delicacies. He killed countless living beings. Indeed, he slaughtered a vast and horrifying number. Later, after the tragic death of his wife, he went utterly mad. He immediately began to blame absolutely everyone and everything around him. He claimed it must have been his relatives who killed his wife. Then he went everywhere, on the one hand, acting as if he had lost his mind, like some people do when they go crazy, spouting all sorts of nonsense. At this point, the Buddha addressed people like him and spoke this verse. So here, it actually refers to sentient beings who are extremely greedy, who are sure to commit all kinds of bad deeds. Moreover, for people like this, living in the world doesn't have much meaning. Even if they live for a while, they definitely won't see the truth. They might not even be aware of their own death. They keep committing negative karma over and over again. And when they finally depart from this earthly world, they will inevitably fall into a bad realm. So greed is truly a terrifying force in our world. It is extremely frightening. The other day, when we were discussing the very first chapter, I specifically asked everyone whether you could develop a sense of impermanence within your own mind stream, a profound sense of urgency, whether you could truly gain some valuable insight in this particular regard. Now, as we thoroughly discuss the chapter on desire, Whether it's worldly love or this kind of greed, for ordinary people, this is very serious. Especially for beings in the desire realm, it is extremely serious. So whether it's through the Buddha's teachings on the faults or on the truth itself, using this approach, can we completely cut off or at least reduce the attachment in our own mind stream? Can we thoroughly eliminate or lessen it? If so, that is also a result of our practice. All right, we'll stop here for today.
Om Bandhangara Banma Sūtra L9